All right, let's talk about something we all think we know. You've heard the story a million times, right? Aggression is just what happens when people, well, lose control. It's a neat, simple story. The more self-control you have, the less aggressive you'll be. But what if that simple story isn't the whole story? What if it's not even close?
So to really get why this is such a big deal, we've got to start with the official story, the one that's been the bedrock of psychology for like decades. So what is self-control really? Well, the textbook definition paints it as our internal brake system, right? It's that conscious part of you that says, nope, don't eat that cookie, or don't say that thing you'll regret. It's what helps us play the long game.
And that idea gives us this really clean black and white picture. You've got your high self-control folks over here. They're calm, cool, collected. And then you have the low self-control crowd over there, impulsive, giving in to urges. I mean, it seems pretty obvious which group is going to be more aggressive, doesn't it?
And look, this isn't just some pop psychology idea, This is serious stuff. For years, a huge chunk of scientific research has pointed to this exact same idea. Aggression is caused by a breakdown in self-control. Case closed.
Or is it? This is where our nice, simple story starts to get complicated. Researchers started finding these weird little inconsistencies, these little cracks that started to appear in what seemed like a solid gold theory.
All of a sudden, you've got these findings popping up that just don't make any sense. For instance, programs designed to boost self-control worked, but they didn't make people any less aggressive. And think about this. A cold, calculated act of revenge. That's not impulsive. That takes a ton of planning, a ton of, well, control.
So what in the world is going on here? All these little contradictions start to pile up, and you have to wonder if that simple story we've been telling ourselves is really the whole story, or if we're missing something big.
All right, to crack this case, we've got to go back and look at the evidence. And it turns out the problem might not be with the suspects, but with the magnifying glass we've been using this whole time.
See, it all might come down to how we've been measuring this thing called self-control. For years, the standard practice has been to look at the forest, this big single number, while we've been totally missing the individual trees that make up that forest.
The old way works like this. You ask a bunch of different questions, you smoosh all the answers together into one single score, and then you just assume. You assume that score tells you everything you need to know. But what if some of those questions are actually telling completely different stories?
And that brings us to a new investigation. Researchers decided to basically reopen this cold case, but this time they brought in some brand new, high-tech forensic tools to look at the evidence in a completely new light.
So they got a big group together, almost 1,400 people, and gave them two of the most famous, most used psychological tests out there for aggression and self-control. But the way they analyzed the results, that was a total game changer.
They use this really cool statistical method called RI-SAIL. And you can think of it like this. The old way was like taking one blurry photo of the entire crime scene. RI-SAIL is like going in and dusting for every single fingerprint, one by one. And when they did that, when they stopped looking at the blurry photo and started examining each individual piece of evidence, oh man, the official story just completely fell apart.
Now first, just to be thorough, they ran the numbers the old way. And guess what? It confirmed the old story exactly as expected. When you just look at that one big average score, yep, higher self-control predicts lower aggression. No surprises there. On the surface, everything looked fine.
But that one simple number was basically a cover-up. It was hiding something much, much weirder happening underneath the surface.
And here is the absolute bombshell. That negative link between self-control and aggression that everyone's been talking about for decades, it was only being held up by 4 of the 13 questions on the test. The other 9, they either had no link to aggression at all, or, get this, they were positively linked, meaning for those items, more self-control was actually associated with more aggression. Just to show you how wild this gets, let's zoom in on one specific question from that self-control test. Just one. Okay, get ready for this. The statement was, people would say that I have iron self-discipline. And the folks who agreed strongly with that statement actually reported higher levels of aggression. All of it, physical, verbal, anger, hostility. The very statement that sounds like the peak of self-control was tied to more aggression, not less. It's totally backwards. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a cool stats lesson, but why does it really matter? Well, this goes way beyond just an academic debate. This changes how we might think about human behavior itself.
Because when we rely on those simple average scores, we're basically creating a statistical illusion. We're creating false positives, seeing connections that aren't really there or are way more complicated than they seem. We could be sending an entire field of science down the wrong path for decades, all because of a measurement error.
And all of this new evidence points to a much cooler, more sophisticated theory, the identity value model. The idea here is that self-control isn't just about slamming on the brakes. It's a tool you use to be the person you see yourself as. If your identity is a person who never backs down, you might use immense self-control to suppress fear and get into a fight.
And that brings us to this really radical, powerful takeaway. What if a great deal of aggression isn't a failure of self-control at all, but an achievement of it? Self-control isn't just a shield against aggression. It can actually be the weapon that enables it.
So this leaves us with a huge final question that completely flips the script. We spent so long asking, how do we build more self-control? But if self-control can also be a weapon, maybe the real question we should be asking is, how do we teach people not just to have it, but how to aim it?